All right. There has rarely, if ever, been a generation that didn't think they were living in the end times, at least not since the Yehudim, that's the Jews, wound up in Babylon. Since then, doom and gloom has always been just around the corner. From the times of Hosea and Yirmiyahu, that's Hosea and Jeremiah, until just before the Maccabean revolt, the Yehudim, the Jews, saw the end of days as a time when God would forgive Israel of her Torah rebellion, of her sin, and would reestablish their covenant. That's all it meant to them up until Babylon. Shortly after the Maccabean revolt, the Yehudim, the Jews, became Hellenized, westernized. And the end times, or the time without a covenant, became the end of the world as we know it. And Judaism began to fill up with apocalyptic literature known as the Apocrypha. Between the time of the Maccabees and the first century CE, Hellenized philosophers, you need to hear this, between the time of the Maccabees and the first century CE, the Hellenized philosophers, who were predominantly Jewish, began using the Jewish Bible, now called the Old Testament, and the letters written by the followers of Yeshua, now called the New Testament, as the basis of their new, more enlightened doctrines for life and love. It was from these philosophers that a new religion, which would eventually be called Catholicism, sprang up. And from it, the Christian world, waiting for an end of the world as we know it event in which God comes back to the earth and leads a bloody war against all the bad people of the world. Psychology teaches us that every generation believes that things were better in our past and that things are getting worse as we move on toward the future. Of course, psychology's point is that this is only a state of mind and not actually truth. Christianity, because of the overwhelming influence of Gnosticism in it today, believes that God messed up in a huge way when he created this world. They now believe that God has to come back to earth and kill all the evil people who will, for some reason, be stupid enough to attempt to fight the hosts of heaven. But just before he does, he will magically pull out all of the Christians in the rapture. Everyone will disappear from the earth. Planes, well, not everyone, but all the Christians that are living right will disappear. Planes will fall from the skies because some pilots will be missing. Women won't be able to find their babies because all the babies will be missing. Cars will crash and there will be chaos throughout the world, even though the New Testament tells us that God is not the author of such things. 7 years after the chaos and unleashing of the demons from hell on all the people, God will come back to earth and pick up the Christians who missed out on him the first time, but now see the error of their past evil ways. Then God is supposed to kill all the evil people and the demons and throw the devil into a bottomless pit where he will fall for all eternity. And finally, God will reign upon a utopian world filled with Christians. Oh, yes, and somewhere in there, God will use fire to purify the earth. Hey, if you think the Christian version of end times is bad, you should read the Chinese version of hell. Just saying. Lately, things have been spinning out of control in the Western world. Our governments are spending money that doesn't exist, like there will never be any consequences for it. We have a murdering, lying crook running for president against a narcissistic, money-grubbing, lying mob boss, and there's a pretty good chance our current Muslim-loving, American-hating, racist bigot president will just declare a state of war and stay in the White House indefinitely. I've been hearing something a lot lately, and I want to set the record straight. History does not now, neither has it ever, nor will it ever, repeat itself. History is just what the name implies. It is history. It is a thing of the past. It cannot and will not repeat itself. People repeat history-ish. People don't repeat history exactly the way it went down in the past. They just make the same old mistakes in new and more enlightened ways. Historically speaking, from the time of Hellenization on, First, the Yehudim, the Jews, began to believe they could help the Mashiach. That's the guy we would call Messiah in English. They thought they could help the Mashiach come to earth either by starting a war with their enemy and or by doing nothing to stop the out-of-control spiral of the Yehudi, or Jewish people. The Muslim religion picked up on this idea and is now actually trying to bring back their Messiah by starting global jihad. Christianity has repeatedly attempted both approaches and is doing it now. Some are preparing for the war, while others are doing nothing, believing that all the bad stuff will speed up the return of Jesus. Are bad things about to happen? They already are, but not because they have to. The future is not set in stone, not even now. But history teaches us that we are about to flush our freedom and the world as we know it down the proverbial toilet. Not because God is coming back to save us and make things right, but because we refuse to learn from the mistakes of our past. We are killing ourselves with political correctness, lies, deceit, corruption, greed, laziness, and complacency. The more things change, the more they stay exactly the same. Ish. Do I believe that things are going to get worse? Yes. I think it's going to be like nothing any of us have ever seen. But I don't know if it is right around the corner or a long way off, though I will say it feels like it's right around the corner. Do I believe that Jesus is going to come and rapture us? No, I do not. But if I'm wrong, you can all make fun of me while you're running around on your white fluffy clouds, and I will be very gracious about it. But if I'm right, you'll need to know what to do when evil knocks on your door. The name of this message is Gloom, Despair, and Eschatology. Should ring a bell in some of your minds. Please stand and cover yourselves for the reading of our scriptures. I am not tethered today. Did not have time to get hooked up, running late, and all that kind of stuff. But if I stand up, all you're going to see is my belly button. So I will spare you the horror and just remain seated. It is not a command of God that we must stand and cover ourselves, ish, but because Yeshua did say when you pray, go in your closet and cover yourself. This is your closet, and that's how you close the door. Anyway, but we're not praying, we're reading the scriptures. This is just something that Yeshua, his Talmudim, his disciples, and their disciples, did. And so we do it too. Our first verse today is from Yirmiyahu, that's Jeremiah, chapter 50, verse 6. It says, Zon ovdot haya ami roehem hitom harim shovevim mehar el giva halahu shachu rivzan. And then the next one is Nahum, also known as Nahum, chapter 1, verse 15. It says, Namu roecha melech ashur yishkenu direcha nafoshu amha al heharim ve'ein metabetz. All right, you may be seated. So we will begin with zone, and that's the word for sheep. It's of flocks, of what they call small cattle in the olden days, and of course that was sheep and goats were small cattle. So it's the same word, it's zone, and it means sheep. But it is the word used for sheep and goats both. Our next word is ovdot, which is lost, to be lost, to lose oneself, to wander, especially used of a lost and wandering sheep, to flee away in the desert as a wild beast, and there to disappear, as it were, because something ate it. I'm just saying. Used of men, it is also used of things, such as rivers, which disappear in the desert. Metaphorically of wisdom failing, because it's things that disappear in the desert, as it were. To perish, to be destroyed, because without wisdom you're destroyed, you perish. Used of men and other living creatures as perishing. Used of land and houses which are laid waste, metaphorically of hope and wishes, desires which are frustrated. that's probably enough that we'll say about that. The next word is haya, which is, it means is. It's something to be, to exist. It is, it was, it will be. It's actually used in all those ways because it's something that is or will be. Is this important? Nah. Then it's Ami. It's literally it's people me because Hebrew, as most languages in this world, says things correctly. It says people me. And in our world we say my people, right? Because we're always putting ourselves in the center. We're always putting ourselves first. That's the way our language is. But most languages do it the other way around. So it's a people so called from their being collected together of a single race or tribe, a family of relatives. Basically, they're saying that if we call ourselves Americans, then Americans are people because everybody that's an American is we're all of that group called Americans. Now, we can say we can divide that down and say, well, this group is African American and that group is Mexican American and that group is Italian American. And then you have smaller groups within the bigger group, right? But something has to tie a people together, a group of people together. And when that happens, they are called a people. So then it says Roehim, and that's just Roi, Yahweh, Roi, Lord Sab, the Lord is my shepherd, Yahweh is my shepherd. Well, this is Roi, and it's shepherds in plural. Is it? Yeah, it's in plural, but it's shepherds they because it ends in hem. So it's because it's Roe, not Roi. So it's Roehim. It's shepherds in plural, and it's their shepherds. It's to feed a flock. And by the way, this isn't a noun. This is a verb. A person in English can be a shepherd, but in Hebrew, a person isn't a shepherd. Shepherding is what a person does. All right, so it's to feed a flock, to pasture, to tend, which feeding a flock is pasturing. You take them out to a pasture and they eat, that's pasturing, thus feeding a flock. It's to tend and figuratively to guard, to care for, to rule, properly to have the sense of looking upon, to look upon with pleasure. To pasture a flock, properly to look after, to behold. Generally, the thinking here is that if you are a shepherd of literally of sheep, you're doing something that you love. You're not just some hired hand. The shepherd loves his flock, at least he's supposed to. If he's really shepherding, he's caring for them. He's protecting them. So they use that of governing and ruling, and of princes and teachers of virtue, and even of God, because God, he cares for and he rules over those who love him. Probably said enough. The following word is heat om. It's go astray. It's to err, to wander, to go astray, to wander through or over, metaphorically used of palm branches because they cover over. Also of drunken men who go astray through drink. Used of the mind which wanders from the path of virtue and piety. In other words, from the path of Torah. So it's to wander, to go away from, to go astray. Then it's harim, to go away from, in this case, the mountains. Har is the word for mountain, and then harim is mountains in plural. It's a mountain track. It's a bunch of mountains. It's exactly what you think of when you say mountains in English. Then it's shovevim, which is turn away them, literally. So it's they turn away. It's falling away. It's to be rebellious. It is from the root shuv, to turn about, to return, metaphorically to be converted. It's of non-Torah observant person, a sinner, and it's followed by another verb, to return and do, or to return to anything, is to repeat something. So you can repeat your sin or you can repeat your Torah observance. But this is of either repeating something or returning to something. So you've gone astray from, in this case, a mountain. And so to return to that mountain would be go back to the mountain, right? So it's in this case, of course, it's this is the first part, the turning away from the mountain. Just in case I've never mentioned what sin is, since it's saying to turn to sin, or to, if you're returning from it, you're returning to Torah rebellion. Why would I say that? Well, for the Christians, and this is very specifically done for the Christians, in 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. That's New Testament Christian Bible. In 1 John chapter 3, verse 4, it says, everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah, because sin is Torah rebellion. I know yours says law. Mark out the word law and put Torah in there, and you'll understand what you're looking at. We'll go back, and then it says Nahar. It says mountains, from mountains. El, which is the word for two, then is Givah, to a hill. So they're going from the mountains to hills. They're going down, right? Because if you're on the mountain, you're at the high part. If you're going down the mountain, you go to the hills and then to the plains. So you're going downward. There's halahu, which is gone they, or they will go, or they have gone, to go, to walk, to go along. It's the idea of boundaries, though, to go through or over a place. So if there are boundaries and you're going outside the boundaries, or you're going inside the boundaries. So it's of a path. It's to walk. In other words, it's the way you live your life. It's your manner of living. That is your walk. That is your path. And your path can be all in between the boundaries and be going according to the Torah, or it can be outside the boundaries and be going against the Torah. Okay, then it's followed by shahu, which is forgotten day, or they have forgotten. It's to leave something from forgetfulness. You know, you walk in somewhere, you take your sunglasses off, lay it down, go do something, you go get your car, and like, where's my sunglasses? Because you left it from forgetfulness. It's important that you understand that you've forgotten something. And it's said of people forgetting their God. And that's idiomatic, by the way, of people who turn away from the Torah. Those are people who have forgotten God. Then it says, Rivzan. And so in this case, what have they forgotten? They've forgotten their resting place. It's of a couch or a bed. It's of a place where flocks lie down. It's used of a quiet domicile of men. So it's a place where you go to rest. All right, so here's my amplified translation of Yirmiyahu, that's Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 6. My people have become lost, wandering with their wisdom failing. They are laid waste, losing hope and lacking desire. Those who tend, guard, care, and rule over them, remember that's the ones who are shepherding them, those who teach them and are their companions, their shepherds, have caused them to wander, staggering from the path of virtue and piety to idol worship. They have turned and converted them to rebellion on the mountains. They are walking out their lives from a mountain to a hill. They have forgotten their resting place. So here's a regular translation. It should make more sense. Again, this is Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 6. My people have been a perishing flock. Their shepherds have caused them to wander on the mountains, causing them to turn from the mountains to the hills. They have forgotten their resting place. Who are the modern day shepherds? Well, for the Yehudim, for the Jews, it's the Shilihim, the Nevi'im, the Rabbim, the Roim, the Moraim, right? But for the Christians, it's the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers. It's the same thing, different words, different language. The leaders of these two religions have caused them all to reject the absolute rule of Torah and have replaced it with a thinly veiled doctrine of anything but God's law. Now, the non-religious, who are their shepherds and teachers and whatnot? Well, it's the K through 12 teachers, the college professors, Hollywood, lawmakers, and government officials. Where else are they going to turn? The non-God-loving American leaders are now attempting to replace the law of this land. Do you know what the law of this land is? It's called the Constitution. If someone asks you, what is the law of the land in America? The answer is the Constitution, or at least it is for up to this point. They're trying to replace that with some form of totalitarianism. That's where you have, a dictator. They call it socialism, and then it becomes communism. It's totalitarianism. It's thinly veiled as utopia. Socialism. They are telling the idiots who will vote for them that they are going to take the money from the rich and give it to the poor. But wait a minute. Think about this. I'm talking to the idiots here, not to you guys. But you get it? I'm talking to the idiots now, not you guys. Don't get mad at me. Wait a minute. The people who are making these promises to take the money from the rich and give it to the poor, they are the rich. And I'm talking still to the idiots, not to you guys. Just think about it a while. You'll get it. Anyway, any way you look at it, the leaders have all turned the people to idol worship. Some actually bow down to man-made trinkets, while others serve the idol they love, like TV celebrities and murdering government officials. It's idol worship by Bible standards. More disturbing than all of that is that these leaders have led all their followers to do this on the mountains, sending them to the hills. Wait, what? What does that mean? What are the mountains? Let's take a look at something Rabbi Yeshua ben Yosef said. It's found in Yohanan, chapter 13, verse 14. It's the book of Mark, chapter 13, verse 14. This is my translation of the Greek text. I don't ever borrow other people's. Well, I shouldn't say ever, but almost never borrow other people's translations. Anyway, it says, this is Yeshua talking. He says, "But when you see the abomination of desolation set up where it should not be, when you see the abomination of desolation set up where it should not be, let him that has read the book of Daniel, to be specific, let him understand. Then let those who are in Yehuda, those who are in Judea, flee to the mountains." This is a remez to, like I said, Daniel, but it's 11:31, chapter 11, verse 31, which, and again, this is my translation of the Hebrew. And the strength, it says arms literally, that's an idiom for strength. And the strength from us will cease. And they will profane the holy place. And they will turn away the continual sacrifices. And they will give us the abomination of desolation. So obviously Yeshua is making this remez to this particular verse. The abomination of desolation is the destruction of the Heichal. That's the temple. To pollute the Holy of Holies is an abomination, but it is not the abomination of desolation. While the holy place being defiled by pagan idols and or sacrifices may feel like desolation to the Jews, it is not. Because while the Heichal, while the temple was standing, there was always hope of their return to it. And all they had to do was purify it. They didn't have to tear it down and start all over again. They just had to purify it. Antiochus sacrificed a pig in the Holy of Holies and set up a statue of Zeus in 168 BCE. We know that this is not the abomination of desolation because the Yehudim were still looking for it to happen. They were still waiting for it to happen in the 1st century CE. That's a long time after the fact. In 4 CE, it was rumored that Herod, the not-so-great, died. So a group of young men dismantled the large graven image of an eagle that Herod placed over the 60-foot-tall doors to the opening of the temple. And then turned out he wasn't dead. It was just a rumor. So when that happened, when he found out that they'd taken down his big eagle, the Roman guards were sent, and they caught about 40 of these men who took it down, and took the men and their rabbis and killed them all. The eagle being hung over the entrance of the Heichal of the temple was an abomination, but not the abomination of desolation. Even sacrificing a pig and putting a statue of Zeus in there wasn't desolation. It was just abomination. We know that this wasn't the one in Daniel because, again, the Yehudim were still looking for it to happen in the 1st century CE, and because right here, Yeshua told his followers, what to do when they saw the abomination take place. Yeshua did this circa 34 CE, long after these abominations took place, and a few decades before the destruction of the Heichal, which he predicted took place. Yeshua was speaking about things to come, not things that had already taken place. At this point in history, the continuous sacrifices were taking place, and the Heichal was still standing. In the year 70 CE, or AD if you don't know what the CE and all that means, it's just a politically correct way to say AD. So in 70 AD, the Heichal, the temple, was destroyed. The continual sacrifices ended, and Jerusalem, was eventually plowed under, complete another abomination that left it desolated. You get it? Curiously, Judaism exists today in large part because some Yehudim, some Jews, fled Jerusalem during the siege of the Heichal of the temple to the mountains of Yavne. They are the reason why we have Talmud following Hellenized Pharisaic Judaism to this very day. Other Yehudim, other Jews, fled to the mountains of Pella during the siege of the Heichal, the temple. And it is said that from this group, Catholicism and thus Christianity came into existence. But this is not accurate. As I said earlier, Catholicism came from the philosophers reinterpreting the teachings of what is now called the Christian Bible through the lens of philosophy. And again, Christianity is now being blended and even overtaken by Gnosticism. So, what happened? Why isn't Jesus or Yeshua sitting on the throne? Why are things once again spinning out of control? I thought that when they saw the desolation and all that, we were in the end days, right? That's what he said. I mean, they ran to the mountains and nothing changed. The abomination of desolation did in fact take place in 70 CE, just as Daniel predicted, just as Yeshua predicted. But I would like to suggest that God's children have yet to run to the mountains. I would like to present the following verse for your consideration. It's found in Nahum. It's Nahum 1:15. Behold, on the mountains, the feet of one proclaiming peace. Celebrate your feast, Judea, and keep your vows, for wickedness will no longer increase and overwhelm you. It is as if the it being wickedness, is entirely cut off. Behold, on the mountains, the feet of one, that should be a capital O-N-E. Well, the O should be capital anyway. Proclaiming peace. This is the Mashiach. Proclaiming peace. What is peace? It's the reconciliation of the covenant between God and the Jews. That's the peace that they talk about in the Bible. So the one whose foot is on the mountain is Mashiach. The mountains of God are a place where the children of God obey his mitzvot, his laws. A place where their covenant, their peace, is reestablished because of God's sacrifice, not man's. A place where God's feasts are celebrated by his people. A place where God's children are Torah observant. They keep their vows. That's what that means. To keep your vows in the Bible is to be Torah observant. For the children of God who do this, it is as if wickedness doesn't exist. It goes away. Why? Because when God's children get busy doing his do's and don'ts, they don't have time to perform that which is wicked. The secret to this idiom, to this mystery, is that by living according to God's law, we are freed from our wickedness, from our wickedness. It is as if wickedness doesn't exist in us. God's law is for God's children. It is not for the godless, though it does judge the godless. So what is going on and why? There is a law created by God called the law of sowing and reaping. This world keeps crashing into turmoil because the people in it keep planting the seeds of turmoil. God is not mocked. If we plant evil or sit back and let others do it on our behalf, we will reap from that evil. All of us. We let our government convince us to just vote for the lesser of two evils, and now our only choices are evil. Well, actually, if you choose the greater of two evils, you just get evil. And if you choose the lesser of two evils, you still just get evil. There are those complaining about the Republicans potentially not giving Trump the nomination. They say he won it. It was the will of the people, but it wasn't the will of the people. He won because the Republican leadership let the Democrats cross party lines and vote for him, among other things. The vast majority of Republicans don't or didn't vote for him. Did you hear me? The vast majority of the Republicans did not vote for him. He did not win it. It is not the will of the people. It is actually the job of the leaders of the Republican Party to force Trump out and put someone who is actually a good representative of the Republican Party in his place. So get off this insane line of thinking and let them put someone like, oh, I don't know, Ted Cruz in there. He will get us back on track. If not, we will hear the sound of a toilet flushing and we will be in the bowl when it happens. God's children never, never, never vote for evil. Never. But Rob, if we don't vote for Trump, we'll get Hillary. Even if this argument was reasonable, which it is not, God's children never, never, never vote for evil. Never. The time of reaping is here. The evil that is about to be unleashed will probably be intense. But we had better start planning something that will bring a good harvest. It is time for God's children to vote for righteousness. If they don't, they'll have the blood of evil on their hands. It may already be too late. Trump may well get the nomination. I just want God's children to see what is unfolding around them and to get on the right path now so that there will be a good harvest even if it comes after we are gone. God is a gracious God, and he gave us our roadmap to salvation a very long, long time ago. It is called the Torah. The Torah is God's grace given to man. It is not rebellion against it that is God's grace. The Torah is God's grace. To live by grace is to live by the Torah. It was a Hebrew idiom. The Western world has perverted it. It doesn't make me wrong. It makes what they've taught you perversion. Any and all nations that make God's law their laws will receive God's protection and blessings. But that doesn't mean that the other nations will not attack a nation following God's law. Part of God's law tells us how to handle such events. Does America have a covenant with God? Is it protected and blessed? No. There is only one covenant. Think about it. When God entered into covenant with Moshe, he went to Moshe, Moshe went to the elders went to the people, and then all the people accepted the covenant. After that, the elders told Moshe that the people accepted. Moses told God that the people accepted. And then one and only one covenant was chiseled into stone. George Washington did no such thing with the people of America. But the laws of this country were founded loosely on the laws of God. And look how far that took us. Think about how far that took us. Just imagine what would happen if America had chosen to serve God wholeheartedly, had chosen to live by the Torah. It could still happen. God's protection doesn't mean that we won't experience bad things. Bad things happen because there will always be people who don't live according to God's law. God created this world. This world is perfect. It is exactly what God wanted it to be. He is not going to destroy it and fix his mistake. There was no mistake. We can only get ourselves in line with the law of God. We can only take ourselves to the mountains But think about what would happen if we all did that. If we all went to the mountains, do we get what going to the mountains is at this point? It's accepting Mashiach. What is accepting Mashiach? It's living according to the Torah, because the Torah observance is the Mashiach. As I said before, the future is not written in stone. It is not too late for America to reestablish the Constitution, and it's never too late for America to become Torah observant. Torah observance of most of the people of this nation would actually bring us to the utopia that cannot be established by philosophers. And by the way, utopia will never come at the hands of a dictator. Will there come a time when people are murdered in the streets of America? It's already begun. How long will it last? That depends on how many of us run to the mountains. What if there are only a few of us who run to the mountains? What if there's only one? Just run to the mountains. It's what Yeshua told you to do. It's the right thing to do no matter what the rest of the world does. What if I run to the mountains and someone decides to kill me anyway? Well, what better time is there for us to run to the mountains than when we are in trouble, in danger, and or terrified? What better time is there for us to run to the mountains than when the forces of hell breaks out all around us? What better time is there for us to run to the mountains than when evil people are doing evil things to our loved ones, to our children? What better time is there for us to run to the mountains than when we are being beaten, filleted, and tortured? I don't think the end of our lives is the best time to be running the best time to be turning our backs on God. Do you? Run to the mountains and know that you'll be with God no matter what comes your way. I believe that oh man, I'm getting stuttery all of a sudden. I believe that the day will come when virtually everyone on earth will be Torah observant. I just think that day is way off. Till then, you can run to the mountains. Shalom and shalom.